NBA Finals bound. Yes, the Indiana Pacers finally did it. And if you go back and look at my prediction for the Pacers and Knicks series, I said that it would be Pacers in 6, and it was Pacers in 6. The series went almost exactly the way that I thought it would. I thought that the Indiana Pacers' pace and their pressure on defense would wear the Knicks down. And we saw several games where the Knicks players did seem to get tired. I thought that their bench would not be able to produce, the Knicks bench that is, but they actually did step up in some big moments and played some big roles, like Mitchell Robinson, for example, which I knew he was going to get a lot of time and have a good opportunity because the Pacers' Achilles heel, their weakness is offensive rebounding. They give up a lot of offensive rebounding, not necessarily over a whole entire game, but there are sometimes where it's just maddening and they just give up 4, 5, 6 offensive rebounds in a quarter. And then they get chewed out or they refocus and they buckle down and they can clean that up. But that can be a real killer. And unfortunately, it did affect them in a couple of their losses. But overall, the Indiana Pacers played their game. They stuck to their game plan. They stuck to their identity, the identity that they had established throughout the entire season of playing quickly, getting the ball up the court. Tyrese got off the ball, went back and got the ball when necessary, and the ball was moving in that Game 6 victory. What a wonderful thing for Indiana. They haven't been to the finals in 25 years. I myself remember that finals vividly. Grew up in Indiana. I had moved at that point, but as a young man, I always felt like, wow, this is great. This is the start of something big, and we'll be here again, hopefully in the next couple of years. And they faced a very difficult challenge at that time in Shaq and Kobe. And people always talk about Shaq and Kobe, but they oftentimes forget that they also had Glenn Rice, who was an all-star that year. And they got him in a trade for basically nothing. And they also had guys like Ron Harper and Rick Fox, who could defend and lock down. The fact that the Pacers took 2 games and were in that Game 6 back in 2000, to me, made me feel proud because they were completely overmatched. Reggie Miller, I love that team and all the different players that he played with, but he didn't have a single Hall of Fame all-star player on his squad at that time. Chris Mullin barely played in that season, and he was probably the most decorated teammate on the team. Rick Smits, one-time all-star. Dale Davis, one-time all-star. Jalen Rose never was an all-star. He won most improved player, but never won an all-star. So that team really overachieved because they had a solid team. They were number 1 in offense and they had a good defensive identity. Very much like this Pacers team. And that's why I'm bringing them up, because the similarities after 25 years, it's just amazing to see that another team has been able to position themselves to be in the finals. However, this team, I think, is better than that 2000 team. And I say because Jalen Rose stepped up and played great that season. And I think that's the only reason the Pacers made it to the finals, is because he stepped up huge in the second half of that season and into the playoffs. But Jalen Rose on his best day is not as good as Pascal Siakam. Reggie Miller and Tyrese Haliburton, Reggie will always be number 1 still until Tyrese can do this a little bit more and have success more. But Tyrese and Siakam remind me a lot of the effectiveness and how well they played together of Reggie and Jalen Rose in that 2000 finals. So the Knicks, they played well overall. They have some deficiencies. They have some issues. The coaching is a problem. Tom Thibodeau is a good coach, really good coach. No championship experience. He's not a champion. Well, he was an assistant, I think, for the Boston Celtics when they won a championship. But on his own, he has not been able to take a team that far. This was a really good opportunity for them, but they just couldn't overcome their problems. I figured shooting was going to be a problem, and I mentioned that as well in the preview. They're going to miss Dante DiVincenzo is what I said. And I still feel that way right now. I think that Dante was a wild card last year and had some huge performances and was able to effectively shoot well over 40%, just about every game. And they didn't have a guy like that. I mean, they have shooters, but they don't have guys that just can shoot under pressure. OG played really solid ball, but he got outplayed by Pascal in I would say at least 5 of the games. Karl Anthony Towns, I really admire his grit and his determination to get to the basket when he does that, and his rebounding ability has always been a huge positive for any team that he's on. I don't think that defensively he has the awareness of what he's supposed to be doing sometimes, because he drops sometimes when that doesn't seem like that was the plan, like he's supposed to be hedging or he's supposed to be trapping. He doesn't do that. But I think the focus defensively on all the players, Brunson, Mikal, Mitchell Robinson especially as well, out on the perimeter, they just struggled identifying who to rotate to. Josh Hart had one of the worst series of his career in the playoffs. He was just very effective on the rebounding, offensive rebounding, but he just seemed to be totally lost by what the Pacers were doing. The rotations the Pacers were doing, the Pacers were setting screens and then having secondary screens, and he just seemed like he just kept getting lost on who was cutting, whether or not he was going to be in the gaps, or if he was going to trap, or if he was the low man on defense, if he was supposed to rotate over and protect the paint. He was a second late on almost all his reads defensively, and he just seemed like he couldn't quite get there. And he's not a shot blocker either, but the Pacers, because of their rotations, he found himself on Miles Turner quite a bit. The Pacers just really executed a game plan that took advantage of every single Knicks weakness that they have. And you got to give Rick Carlisle a lot of credit, because Rick Carlisle, he's been called a basketball genius, a basketball savant by Tyrese Haliburton. And it's true. If you have any mistakes defensively and you give enough tape for him to study and to break down, he will figure out through that film work how they can exploit you. Now the Pacers, so wonderful celebration. Tyrese Haliburton, in my opinion, should have been the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, but Pascal Siakam received it. But I didn't really mind that moment. Pascal was an all-star this year. He was very consistent in the beginning of the season and throughout the playoffs. And so I understand why he was given that type of credit. He had 3 30-point games in this series, and that was huge. There's no way the Pacers win without either one of him, either him or Tyrese. So it's almost like a Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum situation that we saw last year, where you don't win without either one of them. Both of them played on a similar level. And so you got to give it to one of them, and the vote was 5-4, Pascal. I also think it's kind of okay because Tyrese won All-NBA. He was named to the All-NBA third team, and Pascal was not named to any of the All-NBA teams. And so this kind of makes up for that. So now he had an All-Star appearance and Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Now, if the Pacers shock the world and win the NBA Finals, it'll have to be because of Tyrese Haliburton just played out of his mind. So Tyrese has a great opportunity now to try to go for it. And if he feels slighted in any sort of way, then that's great. This is just motivation for him to say, okay, next time you can't let it be that close. You've got to make it obvious that you are putting the pressure on the Oklahoma City Thunder and you were the reason that you won. I know most people are not going to believe that. I did not believe that the Pacers will make it to the finals this year. I believed that they had a good shot against the Cavs to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. In fact, I have a post that I posted back in March regarding the playoffs, my prediction for the playoffs, and I said the Pacers are going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and people will be shocked to see how they do it. And I'm right. People were shocked to see how the Pacers were able to take down the Cavs in 5 games. I can't say that anybody probably really wasn't shocked that they beat them in 5 games, and especially the way that they stole that game in Game 2. Nobody will ever forget that. With that said, I have a hard time picking them to beat the Thunder. The Thunder have really no discernible weaknesses other than the Thunder sometimes they just look brain dead sometimes out there. I guess every team has a bad night where they don't bring enough energy or focus. For example, they lost by 40 points in a game to the Timberwolves. And so the T-Wolves beat them by 40. And I sat there watching the whole game like, how is this happening? Did they just maybe celebrate their success a little bit too much? Did they get too complacent, too lackadaisical? That can happen. And I've seen them have a few bad losses in this playoffs against Denver as well. games that I thought that they really should have won. Game 1 against Denver, they just really made a lot of mental mistakes in the end. Missed free throws, not rebounding well, not getting back in transition. And so if the Pacers can take advantage of those type of mistakes, if the Pacers can beat them in transition, and the Thunder are a really good transitional defensive team. They're a good defensive team, period. Anywhere you want to put somebody on the floor, they can defend you. But at the same time, the Pacers have had some games where they have just gone Super Saiyan. They've just gone berserk shooting. They've had some 60-point quarters, some 70-point quarters in this year's playoffs and last. So if they have some games like that where they're hitting shots despite the defense, then that could put pressure on the Thunder, and they could steal one of these first 2 games in the finals. And if they could steal one of the first 2 games in the finals, then all bets are off. There's a high likelihood that the series is going to go at least 6 games, if not 7, if a home team loses one of those first 2 games. Don't know the number or the probability, but I remember hearing it that it's definitely far more likely that a series extends to 6 games at least, especially now the NBA Finals has the same format throughout that the playoffs have, of 2 at home, 2 on the road, 1-1-1. So I think the Pacers have a puncher's chance. That's what I told one of my friends. We were talking the other day about, do we think the Pacers have a chance? And I said they have a puncher's chance. They're fast and they are smart. They have guys with high basketball IQ. They have guys that can make adjustments from game to game. The adjustments that we saw from Andrew Nembhard historically has been cooked by Jalen Brunson. He has not defended Jalen Brunson very well last year in the playoffs especially, or this year, but he was forced to because Nesmith got into foul trouble and he adjusted. He made the adjustment. He was inside, practically in the shirt of Jalen Brunson. As soon as the ball was outbounded, was taken out of bounds, he was right there in his face. Jalen Brunson probably smelled what he had for dinner on his breath. That's how close he was. And that type of pressure wore on Jalen Brunson as the game went on. I don't understand why the Knicks don't have another ball handler that could have brought the ball up court under pressure. Josh Hart could have at least tried a little bit, or maybe play Brunson with DeLon Wright or with McBride at the same time and allow McBride to bring the ball up a little bit more than he did. Jalen Brunson just takes everything on himself and oftentimes dominates the offense. And I said that as well in my preview, that if Jalen Brunson and Towns dribble, back you up, dribble, and then try to get a shot off, they're not going to win because that plays into the hands of the Pacers defense. And the Pacers defense has been very solid, but where they're susceptible to is driving to the basket. If you can get to the basket, if you can get a step on them, they don't always rotate over very well at the rim. They can. Sometimes they can and you'll succeed. But if you noticed in this series, the Knicks hit a lot of layups against them. Now, they were contested, but they were able to beat them off the dribble because of the Pacers' aggressive style of running the guys off the three-point line. That could hurt them against the Thunder because the Thunder have 2 of the best finishers in the NBA and SGA and Jalen Williams. But I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get closer to the finals. Game 1 is Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. on ABC. Looking forward to it. It's going to be great. Definitely happy for the Pacers, though. The Pacers and the Thunder have the most wins in the year 2025. I'm counting the playoffs now. The Pacers and the Thunder have the most wins. I believe the Thunder have a total of 80 wins, counting the playoffs. 80 wins. And the Pacers now have 62 wins. So when you look at it from that standpoint, it doesn't seem so astronomically difficult for the Pacers to be in the NBA Finals, or so strange. The Pacers have been hot. They got hot at the right time. They finished the season, the last 5 months of the season, a much better team than they started. They dug themselves a hole. But in the playoffs, it didn't matter because they could win on the road or at home. And that's going to help them against the Thunder. But what a joy. It was great to see Reggie Miller be involved as well. And I know a lot of the Knicks fans hated that. They hated Reggie Miller being involved and handing the trophy to Herb Simon, the owner, who made Reggie Miller a famous man and put him in the position to be well paid and to play his entire career in Indianapolis for the Pacers for 18 years. Reggie Miller was the man. And if you think he's not going to be involved or shouldn't be involved, then I don't know what to tell you. If it was the other way around, if they were in New York City and the Knicks beat the Pacers in Game 7 and Patrick Ewing was there, or Larry Johnson, and they said Larry Johnson is going to present the trophy to, James Dolan, and, the finals MVP, which would probably be, Jalen Brunson. I don't think any Knicks fan would have a problem with that. Not a single one. They would all eat that up and love every moment of it and feel like it was definitely warranted. So that's pretty much the way Pacers feel. If you don't like it, believe me, nobody in Indiana cares that you don't like it. Nobody in Indiana cares that you don't think that the Thunder are going to sweep them or beat them in 5. And nobody on the Pacers team or in that organization cares if that's what you think. And that makes a team scary. They are a Cinderella story. They are a Cinderella tale. And just like in the story of Cinderella, just when you think that she's not going to get the prince, what happens? She gets the prince. So just keep that in mind when it comes to a Cinderella team. And we've seen it in the NCAA. We've seen it in other sports as well, where a team just comes out of nowhere. It doesn't happen often, but a team comes out of nowhere and beats all the odds. The 2004 finals is a great example of that, where the Detroit Pistons should not have been in the NBA finals. They should have not beaten the Pacers that year, who had 61 wins. They should have not beaten Kobe and Shaq and Gary Payton and also Karl Malone. They shouldn't have won. But strange things happen sometimes. Sometimes teams are so united, and the power of friendship, as Miles Turner said, can sometimes overcome talent. And a tight-knit unit that is self-sacrificing, that doesn't care if they're the leading scorer this night, or if they lead the team in rebounds, or who's getting the assists, or who has the most minutes. I'm not starting, so I'm not going to play very hard coming off the bench. They don't have any of those problems. Everyone on the team answers the call. They play their role, and they're even willing to change their role from game to game. When you have a team like that, that's dangerous, and they will always have a chance. So I'm looking forward to it. It's a wonderful time to be a Pacers fan if you're a Pacers fan. And if you're not a Pacers fan and you just like good basketball that's played the right way, I think you should enjoy watching the Pacers play. Maybe you don't like Tyrese Haliburton, but he's just celebrating success. And he's also a guy who's been doubted his entire life. Too skinny, just not enough strength or size, doesn't shoot enough, doesn't score enough. He's been put down in a lot of ways, insulted by fans and also even the media. Being called a fake wannabe all-star by a former NBA player. It's like he's been targeted by a lot of former NBA players as well, which is very weird, very strange to hear. And so when you have that, a guy does get a little bit cocky sometimes when he does play well, because it's the feeling of proving everyone wrong, of meeting the hatred and overcoming it. And you can't expect someone not to celebrate that. If you call it front running or whatever. I read a post one time and it said that Tyrese Haliburton's a front runner, and someone said, well, why don't you stop letting him get in front? If you don't like him front running, stop letting him get in front. So yeah, there's a lot of teams that he's leaving in his dust. And if he celebrates that, I see everybody do that. I see, if you don't think Michael Jordan celebrated his successes, or Kobe Bryant celebrated his successes, or Steph Curry, or any of those guys, when they do well, they celebrate. That's the NBA. Shaq, all these guys, all the greats, they celebrate their success. And so Tyrese Haliburton and the Indiana Pacers have the right to celebrate their success, because to a man, most of those players on that team came from being low on people's recruiting and scouting reports. Most of them feel like they were better than they were told they were when they went through the NBA Combine. Most of them feel like they were really just cast aside by their previous team. Think about it. Boston traded Nesmith. Tyrese Haliburton was traded by Sacramento in his second season. Obi Toppin was traded after his second season with the Knicks. They gave up on these guys. Now, of course, they had other players maybe playing in front of them that they like better, but they gave up on them, and except for Tyrese, those other two teams really didn't get something great in return. It worked out for the Celtics. I'll give them that. They got Drew with Malcolm Brogdon as a part of that deal, so it worked out eventually. But overall, these guys have a feeling of, I've been overlooked, I was let down, I was turned away, and people think I'm not as good as I know I am. So when they get the opportunity to play like Obi Toppin did, when he scored 18 points in that game, they're going to do it. They're going to celebrate. They're going to howl and growl and cheer and do all kind of other things, because that's what it feels like when you've been told that you're no good and then you prove it to everyone that you are. And it's hard to contain that emotion sometimes. And so hopefully we'll be able to see a little bit more of emotion as we progress in the playoffs and into the finals, rather. And I'm looking forward to it. All right. Thanks for watching the Tremendous Hustle channel. Please like and subscribe if you have not done so already. I started this to really just kind of encapsulate all of my different thoughts, to be able to just sit here and talk to somebody for 20 minutes or so, about all of these things. I live in a city where there is no NBA team, so it's not very easy to find people that are that willing to talk about it. So this is my outlet. This is my way of communicating things that I've observed. I love basketball, and it's really great seeing all the different nuances and things that go in, and also too to just test my knowledge of the game to see if I can determine what's going to happen and predict what's going to happen going forward. And I haven't given my prediction yet. I'll do that in the next video. So please look forward to that, because I'm going to break down also a bit more of the OKC team and what makes them so successful. All right. Thanks for watching.